While the possibility is there that South Africa may be excluded from AGOA, some analysts believe any impact on this exclusion could be minimal, while others believe that AGOA may continue, but others are saying that, in fact, the impact might be huge for some industries. Whatever the situation, an opinion piece by experts Meluleki Nzimande and Jarvis about this makes a case that this may be the perfect time for the country to start building some new relationships. Joining us to unpack this further is Meluleki Nzimande, who is a partner at Webber Wentzel. Good evening to you, Mr. Nzimande, and thank you so much for your time. While there's some panic from some certain industries about the looming decision on AGOA, some saying that yes, you're seeing the tariffs, it automatically for them nullifies AGOA, but you are arguing there in that piece that you've also co-written that it's actually time for calm in the face of these geopolitical tensions and keep it moving. Tell us why.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening. Panic has never helped anyone. All decisions must be based on facts and rational consideration. The reciprocal measures which Trump recently announced are a major barrier, but when you look at them carefully, you will find that there are exemptions on certain products, or certain products are not listed as being subject to these reciprocal measures. In agriculture, for instance, you will find that you won't find avocados or beef listed in those as being subject to those measures. What then that means is that you then default to what currently exists. And what currently exists would be the ordinary import duties on those products, which AGOA then zero rates, such that the preferences that attach to those products continue until AGOA expires in September of this year. Now, the question is whether when it expires, is it going to be renewed, or with South Africa being part of it, or is South Africa then going to be excluded? If South Africa is excluded, then those products which are exempt from the reciprocal measures will then become subject to the normal measures, normal customs duties, which every other exporter to the US is subject to, which then means that it will just be how competitive we are relative to other players, both those that are supplying to the US and those that are producing inside the US. So the long and short of it is that you need to sit down, analyze, and as a sector, decide what's appropriate to do.
I'm going to circle back to that in just a moment. As you and I are chatting this evening, there's a post by the US president on his platform, Truth Social, and he's talking about the fact that based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, is hereby raising the tariff charged to China by the United States of America to 125% effective immediately, and saying that at some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the US and other countries is no longer sustainable and acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, as well as the USTR, to negotiate a solution on the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, at my strong suggestion, that's Trump, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States. So then he says, I have authorized a 90-day pause at a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Does this 90-day pause help?
When you're a player in commerce, you want certainty. You can't wake up today and find that what was assumed as a constant yesterday is now something different. Who knows that there might be another announcement day after tomorrow, which spells out a different set of circumstances. The truth is, the action by the US to impose what it calls reciprocal measures marks the end of the rules-based multilateral trade system as it has been in existence for a long time, since basically, I think, the end of the Second World War, and then consolidated in the 1994 WTO agreement. So there is actually major uncertainty. That is why we urge just focus, keep track of what's happening in your sector, and focus. If, for instance, your products are exempt, all these shifts don't really affect you. But if your products are not exempt, then you need to keep a focus on it. And
So,
having said that, sorry.
no problem. I wanted to then ask, as you speak about that, right? So how do the agricultural exporters, who some are looking as possibly those who could bear the biggest brunt here, then safeguard their positions? And I ask this especially when it comes to making sure that, for example, their goods are competitive. Could that help?
A 30% tariff, if that's what catches you, is very difficult to overcome. It almost acts as a barrier. You have to be, I think it will be, I find it hard that you'll be able to cut your costs by 30%. You may want to share the burden, say, because there's an exporter on the South African side, there's an importer on the US side, and then there's a consumer on the US side. If perhaps you split the 30% across the three, and each of those parties shoulder the pain, there might be some way to do it. But even 10% for me sounds very stiff, particularly on agricultural products, because they're commodities. They are very price sensitive. It's unlike high value products like Rolls-Royce, where even the buyers of those products are not too sensitive to price movements, perhaps. So that's the difficulty. The type of product that is concerned is an issue. The particular effects of the sector, the particular effects of the tariffs, those are all things that need to be examined very, very carefully and closely.
So,
yes.
When you look at AGOA then, some have said that maybe this might be the opportunity for the African continent to just look inward, for South Africa then to explore some new relationships around the African continent and try to increase trade in that particular, area, but also looking to see if there could be some international players that maybe South Africa may just then start courting here. Can that work?
That is what is the second line of action. If the US market is effectively closed to you, diversify. The African continent on which South Africa is located is a natural close market. As it happens, our exports as of 2024 to Africa accounted for 30% of total exports. So we're already exporting a substantial volume of products by value into the African continent. But we've got other markets with which we've got preferential trade terms, in other words, favorable trade terms. If you look at the European Union and the United Kingdom, we've got economic partnership agreements with each one of them, where our duties enter the duty free. Our products enter those markets duty free, and then you've got the Middle East, which may not even compete with us in terms of what we supply there, because they don't grow a lot of the things that we are able to grow. So, and then you've got obviously China being one of the biggest importers of agricultural goods, and if in North America, America is not the only country. There's Canada. So diversification away from the US will be a good strategy. Add to that, we also need to look at our defensive interests. Remember that we will not be the only ones who are diverting supply away from the US, looking for markets elsewhere. And South Africa itself can be a potential market for others who are supplying into the US market, to whom now that market is closed. So you also need, as a South African producer, to look at defensive strategies to see how you can, survive that trade diversion which might come your way.
So briefly then, before I let you go, the conversations, right, are ongoing about the economic fallout, from AGOA should South Africa find itself not being renewed here, with one report by Brookings Institution, for example, in 2023, finding that the impact on exports and the GDP would be a small one. That's what they say. But they say that while be that as it may, there may be some specific industries locally that could be hit hard, particularly when you think about the threats to jobs. Let's unpack this just a little bit and look at what could be then the real economic fallout here.
Trade under AGOA, as that article indicates, is a small portion. Remember what AGOA does, it basically allows you to have preferential access to the US market. In other words, if there's a 10% tax at the border, what AGOA does says it zero rates that tax for you if you're an eligible African country and your products are eligible. So it doesn't bar you from selling in the US. It only gives you an advantage. So if it goes, everything else being equal, then you are trading on the same basis as everyone else. So that is why when you look at then the total impact on the economy, firstly, goods that are traded under AGOA account for a relatively small portion of what is traded generally, but outside AGOA. But when you then take that and compare it to the total GDP of South Africa, it's a relatively small amount, as that article says. And then, which is why I was saying earlier that if you're able to find alternative markets, you can offset that adverse impact.
As you say, nothing ever comes from panic. But thank you so much for your time this evening. Appreciate it. And quite an interesting read there. That is the opinion piece that you've penned. Appreciate your time. That's Meluleki Nzimande there, who is a partner at Webber Wentzel.